Hello and welcome to this October 2022 it's still Mercury retrograde right now, astrological overview of the month. Now, October is really cool. This one has a lot of transits going on, a lot of shifts, a lot of changes in planetary phases. And we are coming back into the eclipse season for the final half of 2022, where we will have the solar eclipse in Scorpio by the end of the month. So there's a lot going on. Buckle up. We are going to talk about transit for transit, what's coming up, roughly what we can expect, and I'm going to show you the charts to go along with it. There's an amazing PowerPoint that I love making for you guys that I will be showing to go along with this whole time that we spend together. And I am also going to make this PowerPoint available to you as a free download with a link in the description of this video, where you can actually download that and just have it handy for you as we go throughout the month. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and you will be able to see what we've got going on here. Okay, so here is our astrology overview for October 2022. Occasionally, if you're still seeing my face on the screen, you will notice me looking to the side. That's because I have a more in-depth chart with more detailed notes over here to be able to show them to you as we go. And for anybody who's watching this and you see the length of the video and you're like, I don't have that kind of time, I am linking the major events of the month, being the lunations, which is the full moon in Aries, and the solar eclipse that will be in Scorpio. And I will also have a timestamp link to Scorpio season. So you'll be able to jump to those particular things a lot more quickly. And if you happen to notice that there's a transit before or after them, you can find those transits around those three particular points that we will highlight and link in the video in the description. So hopefully that makes this more navigable for you as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive in because October begins with transits on the very first day. So our overview begins with the 9th is going to be our full moon in Aries at around 4:54 p.m. Eastern time. On the 23rd, we will have Scorpio season, which officially starts at like 6:36 a.m. Eastern time. And then we will have that new moon partial eclipse in Scorpio at 5:54 p.m. Eastern time on the 25th. So this is a nice slide that you'll be able to refer to throughout the month as a super quick reference for anything you need. And of course, it is Scorpio season, not Libra season. That's my bad. I made this during Mercury retrograde, which fortunately, as you can see, will end on October 2nd. So what we're looking at is on October 1st, Venus, which is very much like conjunct the sun. We'll be able to see that, I believe, on our next slide with the chart. Venus is going to be running with the sun for a lot of the month because at the end of the month, we will cover Venus gets to have a cazimi with the sun. And I will cover that more in depth at the Venus cazimi day, which is October 22nd. Again, you'll notice it listed in the notes below, and then you'll be able to click close to that and say, oh my gosh, what on October 21st and 22nd, what's Venus cazimi? It's truly just Venus being in the heart of the sun or conjunct down to the minute, give or take 15-degree minutes. So Venus, even as of October 1st, is at 3 degrees of Libra, which is her sign. So she's also considered chariot. A lot of people on social media have been mentioning chariot. That simply means that the planet is in their ruled sign along with the sun. They are in the sun's chariot. Thinking about the sun as Apollo, Venus is riding in that chariot with Apollo, with the sun in her home. So that's what we're experiencing that day. But Venus will be perfecting an opposition with Jupiter this day as well. Jupiter is retrograde in Aries at this time. Later in the month, Jupiter will come back into Pisces, his domicile, still retrograde, but a little bit happier in his home sign. So this is actually an opposition, which normally means tension between the two planets. And it kind of still does, but in this case, it is tension between the two benefics. Venus is the Fortuna minor and Jupiter is Fortuna major. And so that means that these are both really positive influences having tension with each other. So it's really about reflection between two good things or two positive things. So we're getting clear on our alignment with our focus and with our actions. Venus is saying, how do I feel about this? Is this fair to everybody? Jupiter is saying, I want to move on it now. Does this feel expansive for me and creative for me as I move forward? And those two things will be able to say yes and find agreement with each other, possibly through a tension or some kind of situation that makes you pause and think. But that's great because that means you get to consciously choose what comes next with that, especially with the sun also throwing his hat in the ring here and being involved with Venus. And then on the second, Mercury finally is direct, and you can hear my dogs are very excited about that. The degrees that Mercury covered during this retrograde were 8 degrees Libra back to 24 degrees Virgo, which now Mercury will cover one more time during this post-shadow phase. That just truly means Mercury is now at 24 degrees Virgo and has to move forward again towards 8 degrees Libra just to recover that. So again, if we think about Mercury having retrograded, it covered certain degrees at first, it went backwards over them. Now that it's going forwards again, it will cover them one more time. That is post-shadow. So we're looking at post-shadow lasting until the 16th of October. This is a fine time to begin new things. What you'll likely notice is that the things that came up for you during Mercury retrograde are now receiving their final touches. If we think about it like that Libran makeover, what we're noticing is we decided what new aesthetic we wanted, we applied it, tested it out, and now we're putting that final touch on the whole situation, making sure that it is practical and applicable to our daily lives as per Virgo's preferences. Now, Mercury in Virgo is both exalted and in domicile. So this is actually a really positive position for Mercury to be gaining speed in now that they are moving forward again. On the 6th, we are looking at, I'm just going to move my chart forward so I can make sure I'm seeing what we're looking at. We're seeing Mercury now trining Pluto for a second time. If you've been following my skits on TikTok, we've seen this happen. I think this is actually the second time because Mercury went forwards with Pluto, now went backwards with Pluto, and this will be the third time, in fact, because Mercury is now direct and interacting with Pluto one more time. So these are easy, small changes with big results. Pluto likes to magnify or exaggerate things and take something that's really small and make it really big, or something that's really big and make it really small. Those extremes come with Pluto. And Mercury, of course, has a really interesting relationship with translating what Pluto does. If you think about mythology, we see Hermes being the person who can bring heroes to the underworld and convey them to Elysium. So Hades and Hermes, who are Pluto and Mercury by association, do have this relationship of being able to transcend that barrier between the world of the living and the world of, let's just say, the world of the dead for a practical, easy to understand thing, but it's the world of reforming, of rebirthing that we really want to think about when we think about the underworld. It's where we go between the living and what comes next. It's that time of rebirth into either a new whatever comes next, or into, if it's part of your worldview, into the next life. Just that phase of re-evolving and re-emerging as something brand new, the phoenix rising from the ashes. So when we think about this, Mercury, making it very personal with these small steps, is taking these big transformational feelings or events that Pluto is bringing up and bringing them to us to be able to work with. So small changes with big results, adjustments to your nutrition and the systems that guide your process for food or work in your day, because again, we are looking at this being between signs of Earth, specifically thinking about things that are supportive for you, with Pluto really transforming our structures, being in Capricorn, and has been for quite a long time, and will in fact finally change signs come March 2023. Mercury is doing most of the movement here though, and is translating this energy. And Mercury, as we've mentioned, is in Virgo. So Virgo is health and work, and really is the wheat. So those things that are daily choices that culminate into long-term effects. So this is a great time to start a new health routine, or start a new routine in your home, cleaning, that kind of thing, or maybe even a new work position or work process that you've been meaning to try out. And now you're just like, you know what, done with that one, moving on to this one, clean cut, moving. So that is just our first week, and I've named this or summarized it as the week of renewal, because we do have this opposition, Mercury finally moving forward and touching base with Pluto, who is saying, hey, all this transformation we've been going through, we need to talk about this, which is another Mercury thing to do. And then, of course, on the 8th, Pluto will take his turn and go direct as well. So Pluto is applying the internal growth or eternal growth that we've been really integrating since April 30th when Pluto went retrograde. Now we're going to see April 30th come up a couple times in here, and that's kind of fascinating if you ask me, because April 30th was also one of the eclipses from the last series of eclipses that we had at the beginning of 2022. So April 30th had a lot going on. It was quite a dense day. There is an astrological overview for that month on my YouTube here on YouTube, and you can check it out and see everything that happened that day. But a lot of cycles began. And of course, we did have eclipses, and Pluto went retrograde that day. Pluto is the furthest planet out. It moves very slowly. In fact, we use Pluto to help us define the differences between generations of people. So millennials, you've got Pluto in Scorpio. Gen Z has Pluto in Sagittarius. Gen X, you've got Pluto in Libra. And people before that have Pluto in Virgo. We will be experiencing Pluto in Aquarius to end Gen Alpha, believe it or not, in March of 2023. That's when we'll come into whatever the next generation is going to be called. So think about all the internal growth and transformation that you've been going through since about April, and really bookending it with those eclipses. And think about how now you get to move forward as this renewed form. This is the butterfly emerging from the cocoon or the chrysalis. Then we have on the 9th, we're looking at full moon in Aries, which we will get to see the chart for on the next slide. So don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. But this full moon in Aries is like a divine wind in our sales, which should not read sales as in transactions. It should read sales as in ships. Again, with the Mercury retrograde. I don't know if you can see my shirt. It actually says, sorry for what I said while Mercury was in retrograde. Sorry for what I typed while Mercury was in retrograde. But we will have this wind in our sails, propelling us towards what eclipse season is bringing in for us. Remember, this theme has been going on for us since last Halloween, where we've been experiencing these eclipses starting in Taurus and Scorpio and alternating back and forth, which they will continue to do until July 2023. And we'll really be feeling them until April and May in 2023. So we're kind of getting ready for that, because this is the last lunation, the last event that the moon has, whether it's full or new moon, before eclipses begin. So it's important to remember that if you have any sort of releasing techniques that you're thinking about using in honor of this full moon, you want to get that done now, because the next full moon and the next new moon are more allowing rather than aligning, or rather than deciding what you want. This is us picking up what the universe is throwing down rather than putting in requests. So that is a brief summary of what we'll be looking at with the full moon in Aries, again at 4:54 p.m. Eastern time, which you can refer to the first slide to see that at a glance if you need it. On the 10th, on 10/10, Mercury will move into Libra. And so with Mercury in Libra, we will have Mercury, the Sun, and Venus, all in Venus's sign of Libra, really bringing emphasis onto our relationships, really bringing emphasis into our values, and really bringing emphasis into our ability to communicate what is important to us and to listen to what is important to others. This is a sign of compromise, and compromise means win-win. It doesn't mean I give up something so you can have it, which often Libra energy is prone to do. People with strong Libra placements often will compromise themselves rather than include themselves in what ends up being fair and balanced. And really, that's not fair and balanced. So make sure that you're knowing your boundaries, you're knowing what you need to be sustained, you're knowing what you need to be happy. Venus loves joy, right? So it's important to remember that as well. Mercury at this point is still post shadow, which means we've covered these degrees before it, closer to the beginning or middle of Mercury's retrograde. So this might be some rehashing of relationship things that came up around that time, hearkening back to the beginning of that for us at that point. So thinking about communication and relationships, just decisions, not meaning like just decisions. We're talking about justice, fair decisions, playing both sides of a situation and seeing what the truest form of the story is. What is the one that leaves you feeling neutral in your confidence of a decision moving forward? So those are things to be thinking about around the 10th of October. On the 11th, the sun is going to trine Saturn. And what this actually means is Saturn is preparing to station direct. Now, Saturn is a slow mover, but we know that in this phase with this aspect, we're getting to the point where Saturn is about ready to move direct, which he will do on the 23rd. So Saturn will move direct on the 23rd. We are looking at, with this trine between Saturn and the sun happening in the air signs of Libra and Aquarius respectively, we're seeing some clarity on what's changed in our lives over the last few months that Saturn has been retrograde. So we're looking at, I have rebuilt this, I have remodeled this, I have reassessed the functionality and the sustainability of this, whatever that is in your life, and check out what Aquarius, where Aquarius is in your life. For me, that would be the 4th house. So 4th house themes are what I would expect to gain some clarity on and some movement towards. And that's really interesting for me because these things are things that I've been working on since that time. And I'm sure that you have something related to the house that Aquarius rules in your chart, the numbered pie slice in the chart that you can look at. And I'll point out what a house is on the chart in the next slide to make sure it's very clear what you're looking for. And so socially, because Saturn is a social planet, because it does move slower, it also kind of ushers in social movements. It brings about changes on a societal scale. So what we might expect to see are things that are bringing equitable situations to light in order for them to be mended and supported. Remembering that Saturn is still retrograde at this point. So we're still revising certain things. So this doesn't quite work for everyone. How do we create something that is supportive for as many people as possible, and preferably for everyone who is affected? So that's something to keep an eye on, what I would consider a headline for, because things that happen on a societal or collective scale end up being in our headlines. On the 12th of October, we see that Mars will square Neptune. And on the same day, Mercury will oppose Jupiter for the 3rd and final time. Again, I've done this skit a couple times on my TikTok at The Real Crystalline, if you're interested. And I personify the planets in skits and just kind of give them relations and conversations to help personify and explain what these transits are like and what it feels like in astrology, and really what we're talking about when we talk about aspects in astrology, aspect being seeing each other and having a conversation. So with this, these conversations that are happening at this time, Mars square Neptune may help us kind of get us into a little bit of like impulsiveness, but really not knowing what we're heading towards. We just know we want to move. We're not really sure what we want to move towards. It's a little bit blurry in the near future, but we still want some kind of movement. And I get it, because Mars is actually pre-shadow himself for a retrograde that will begin at the end of the month. So Mars is saying, like, I want movement. I'm really pushing forward here because I'm going to have to slow down soon. So I want to get as much done as possible. And Neptune is blurring those lines and kind of slowing us down, probably on a more mental or just like mental scale in that meantime. So we might have some confusion with our words at that point, or say something and it's like, that wasn't the right word. Let me correct myself. I want to make sure that we understand it is okay to say, hey, that's what I said. What I meant to say, or a better word, was this. You are totally fine if you want to edit something you've said out loud. You're allowed to do that. We do it with emails and things all the time. Heck, even a new feature on phones and email functions is to unsend an email so you can fix it. You can unsay something simply by saying, that's not how I wanted that to come out. Give me a chance to state myself more clearly and authentically. And I think people, especially people who understand you and value you in their lives, the way you value the people in your life, you would be understanding for them, and the right people will be understanding for you as well. but also keeping in mind that Mars is in Gemini. So misunderstandings can happen. Conversations can get heated. It's simply the climate we're in right now, and that too shall pass. But being able to give yourself a breath before responding will also help you think quickly, come up with the words, and then choose them more consciously, which is a higher expression of using that Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So we might say what we don't mean, or what we didn't know that we actually meant. We might have some Freudian slips that come out there. So make sure if something does slip out, you assess that for yourself. Take some time to be internal and process and say, wow, what does this mean? Like that I said this or that this came out. Do I need to kind of do some soul searching, as Neptune would encourage and be useful for? And then we can take a really quick step back to look at this full moon in Aries. So the affirmation I've given for this is I am divinely supported. The reason for this, and I'm going to dive into my notes to make sure that I say this all to make sure that it's very clear. This full moon in Aries is conjunct Chiron and opposite Venus. So as you can see with my little blue dot, we have the sun up here, which is conjunct Venus. As we can see, they're running pretty closely together. They will get closer and closer as they progress through Libra. But the moon over here is actually conjunct Chiron. So we have this opposition, which is characteristic of the full moon. And we also have a nice trine forming here between the sun, Mars, and Saturn, giving us the support of this intellectual kind of relations thing. Air also being something that does have a bit of spirit infused into it, similar to the way fire does, but that's sort of spirit of, holy fire kind of thing. So this is a great time to tap into the fire of your intuition and acknowledge what lights you up, acknowledge what makes you feel mentally stimulated, but also what you want to be moving towards, what strikes your ambition, what makes you want to do things. Fire is highly intuitive. It is the forge of creation. So as you're thinking about manifesting, fire is a really interesting element for that. And with this full moon in Aries, we're getting a really interesting picture of what we are creating around us and what we want to see more of. And this is a really great time for sort of cleansing and purifying fire, refining fire. As you take a metal and make it into gold and silver, you refine the metal in fire to do that. So that's something that we're kind of doing with our emotions and with our lives right now. So you're going to want to check out where Aries is. And I will, of course, be posting on TikTok and Instagram horoscopes specific to each rising sign. So I will do all of this astro math for you and tell you what area of life will be kind of noticing this full moon for you and the best ways to take advantage of it. All right, so moving on into, I think we're like in the third week now, so we're doing a really great job here. We're moving into the 14th of October, which shows Venus trine Saturn retrograde. Mars, on the day I'm recording this, which is September 28th, just had a trine with Saturn as well. So with Venus trine Saturn, Venus in Libra, Saturn in Aquarius, we're finding support in our relationships. We're being both emotional and practical, knowing that Venus, again, in Libra is very fair, and Saturn in Aquarius is very equitable, the humanitarian kind of minded person. So we're forming strong bonds, and we're really just connecting with people and saying, wow, you're another human being. That's so unique and special and amazing. And I can witness that in you. So this is a really nice opportunity to be able to see the light in others reflected in them to you and from you to them. So I summed this week up as personal relations. This is our PR week, and we will notice on the 17th, so we get a couple days off before the 17th when the sun will form a trine with Mars. The sun again in Libra, Mars in Gemini. We have aligned action. The sun puts light onto things, gives energy to things, just the way the sun through its rays creates photosynthesis and gives life to literally everything we see. It does empower and align with the things that it connects to as well. So the sun trine Mars creates aligned action, clear, applicable communication, Mars being in Gemini. It's something that we can act upon. Now, Mars is not yet retrograde. We may revisit some of these things later once we've learned some things from them. But this trine is saying, yes, this is making a move that feels good, that is moving me forward, that is creating positive progress. And so you might notice that with the relationship aspect of Libra being brought into this, we are on the same wavelength as someone that we are partnering with or as someone that we are working with around this day. On the 18th, Venus will trine Mars. Now, this is nice because Venus and Mars, believe it or not, Venus is one of the planets that has the better relationship with Mars, tolerates Mars the most, I guess you could say. Mars has a tendency to irritate people, being fiery as he is, and a little bit contrarian. But Venus kind of can see through that and can accept that about people. So with Venus trine Mars, we have the in Fortuna Minor, which is Mars, and the Fortuna Minor, which is Venus, trining each other, creating this balance that is very personal to us since they are both personal planets. So this is a united we stand kind of thing. You and me, balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and creating that yin and yang kind of energy that just brings it all together in oneness, which I like to think of the idea of atonement being at one ment, which I'm not the first person to say, but I can't remember which sources I have seen that in recently. It's been multiple, so I know that many people have this concept. And I think that it's really useful to think about in this, where we can be agreeing on goals and ideals and plans together, knowing that we're working together, like everybody's on the same page and everybody's doing their equal share of the project, which is fun to think about as well. On the 19th of October, we're already over halfway there, believe it or not. On the 19th of October, the sun will square Pluto. So we have these obstacles to overcome to take relationships to the next level. Now, again, we're drawing that from the sun in Libra, Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is providing these obstacles that are provided to level you up. So if you think about a video game scenario, the sun is the hero. You've got the sword. You're ready to go into a boss battle. Pluto is the boss, and not just the boss, but the loot after the boss that helps you level up your character overall, that provides something for you to be able to take on that more difficult part of the game, prepares you for what's coming next, levels you up, removes the plateau, and takes you to a new transcendent place. So I like to call this the cooperation course, because with the sun square Pluto, if we can work together to overcome an obstacle, it will take us to the next level, because we do have that Libran situation that's going to set up really sustainable things for a very long time, with Pluto being in Capricorn. And so it's easy to think about this as a crazy trust exercise. The Libra element being the trust, but Pluto brings a little bit of crazy in it. Again, Pluto likes to take things from one extreme to another. So what is small gets engorged. What is large gets minimalized. It's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So something that's like, oh, wow, that just immediately became very small. And if you think about it as sort of like a black hole, it's very small, but the amount of mass is just unfathomable. So there is this strange amount of intensity and power that comes even in the smallest things. And if you can channel that into something constructive, imagine what you can do. And cooperation can really help to make something an even larger scale. Combining two powers reminds me of Captain Planet. If you bring all of your elements together, you create a wholeness of just unstoppable ability. Then we move on to the 20th, and we're actually getting close to Scorpio season, but not quite. So on the 20th, we have Venus square Pluto. And again, not surprising, since Venus and the sun are moving together at this point. They are at 26 degrees for Venus in Libra, 27 degrees for the sun in Libra. So they are within a degree of each other, not quite partile, because they're not on the same numbered degree. For anybody who's interested in some more astrological terminology, partile means on the same degree within that same number degree. So Venus square Pluto, we're looking at Venus in Libra, Pluto in Capricorn, conflicts over relationships. And I have sex in here because this could be gender, this could be sexuality. Pluto does govern those intense things. And if you think about the forge of creation, procreation is something that comes into that. And Pluto and Venus have been involved with this cycle that began, I actually do have notes for this. So I'm looking at the 20th, that began on December 13th, 2022. So we had at that time, one of the things that seemed to set the tone for this was actually weather related issues. It did take place, that conjunction, in Capricorn. A lot of social justice was in the headlines at the time. There was a tornado that brought death and destruction, very Plutonian, to Kentucky through natural disasters. So something that we might see, I'm not saying there's going to be a natural disaster. I am saying that we might see themes of transformation come up around nature. There may be some kind of a natural event. I wouldn't fear it because why? At the same time, we might see some movement through conflict, but also conflict can just be applying work or applying effort. So it doesn't have to be battle. It can just be through applying effort. We might see some progress in social justice. And sometimes with a square, that can be, we've realized this doesn't work. So this thing right here, we're going to move in opposition of this. We're going to move against this. And that way we can create the equal and opposite, which would be the change that we want to see. So that's one way to look at it. Now, it has a potential to show up in all of the manifestations of it. I am not in control of how the transits show up. I just like to help give an idea of what kind of themes we can notice so that no matter how it shows up, we can say, oh, well, I'm prepared for this. I'm emotionally prepared for this. I'm mentally prepared for this. It's cool. I can handle what's coming now. So you might notice headlines for this one too. I like to think that this is more a global scale, maybe even more of a forces of nature scale, because Pluto is way far out there. So those transpersonal planets, transpersonal meaning things that happen in the forces of nature that affect us all and kind of in the end can help unify us as well, because we're all dealing with a similar thing. It was a Pluto-Saturn conjunction that really heralded the pandemic, which in a lot of ways created an explosion of unity and also of adversity. So we can see how both of those things did happen with this. Both of those things can happen in everything, and we have survived all of them. So I want to make sure that I'm not fear-mongering here. That is not the point, but that in practicality, we might see some things, especially with Venus rather than Saturn, a social planet being involved, and Venus being Fortuna minor, a positive planet overall. We're going to see some things probably surrounding social justice things, especially with Venus being in Libra, social justice, gender equality, or things that make us realize the progress that is left to cover in those areas. That's my educated guess based on the themes here. All right, and then on the 22nd, we're seeing this Venus Cazimi, which I mentioned before. So the Venus Cazimi and Mercury will also trine Saturn, who is still retrograde. So it is a new cycle for Venus because Venus is exactly conjunct the sun. They have come around to the same point. And so it's very much like a new moon, but for Venus. So she begins a new cycle going around the chart until she meets up with the sun again. So we begin this new cycle for Venus, and Venus is in domicile for this. It's not always that Venus and the sun will conjoin in Venus's sign. That's not a given. So this is kind of special in that way. And also on this day, shameless plug, I will be speaking at KazimiCon, which takes place on Twitter. And that is actually linked in my latest newsletter. If you receive that, you'll be able to see it in there. Get a link to follow KazimiCon on Twitter and get all the updates if you're interested in seeing all the speakers, including myself, on that. Fun fact, also on October 10th, I will be speaking at Astromagia, which is an astrological magic conference. So if you're interested in that, there is a link in all of my bios on social media and on my website, I believe, where you can find access to that as well. Both of these are online, super accessible. Another thing that we can think about with Venus Cazimi is golden friendships. The sun is gold, Venus is relationships and friendships, and the relationship between me and you, us and them, that kind of balance. The one and the other, the binary opposites that actually don't exist without the other. It's kind of fun. Another way to express this is to have a conversation with someone and really get on the same page and be able to just sit there and be authentically you, speak your truth, understand your ideals. You might notice, especially when Venus is conjunct the sun within 8 degrees, it is considered combust and burned up. But during Cazimi, they blend together into this amazing, again, refinement. So Venus is refined into something more golden. And so at this point, you might notice that while things have been a little bit touchy with relationships, the days surrounding this, at this point, we are seeing Venus coming into her own and being a divine feminine, standing in her power. You can see like the golden goddess, just sort of wind blowing her hair and that kind of image. being able to do that and be authentically you and transparently loving unconditionally in this case is absolutely there, especially with Mercury trine Saturn, because we have Mercury also quite close, only about 10 degrees away from Venus and the Sun, and Saturn in Aquarius. We are communicating ourselves. We are communicating ways of fairness, of equality, of justice. All of those things are really important here. And we're learning to embrace our uniqueness and to say, it's okay if I'm different and it's okay if you're different. Our differences it's not one of those incredible quotes of if everybody's super, nobody will be. No, it's everybody's unique. And there's such a uniqueness here that you get to be the unique one in that space. I get to be the unique one in this space. So if everybody's unique, everybody's unique. It's just that perfect. So keeping that in mind, there's no need or call for any kind of worry of jealousy or anything like that, because you do have a space that you fill and it's unique to you, just as everyone else has their unique space to fill as well. And that makes the world go round rather than everybody being the same. So on the 23rd, we do have Scorpio season, which I will show you the chart for next. And even like 2 days after that, the very next thing will be the new moon. So we're going to look at 2 charts in a row next, one for Scorpio season and one for the new moon. Scorpio season officially kicks off at 6:36 a.m. on the 23rd. And it's Scorpio season, right? So Scorpio is known for its intensity. Scorpio is known for really getting to the depth of things. It is a water sign, so there's some emotion and intuition that goes into this. We're really thinking about the flow of things. And on this day, the Sun and Venus together will move into Scorpio. So Venus is actually walking with the Sun over this threshold from her domicile into a sign of her detriment, because it is opposite her other domicile of Taurus. We are also slowly making our way towards that eclipse that will take place in Scorpio, which is what this other moon is 2 days later. So we're preparing for this eclipse to bring in strong new beginnings, possibly emotional ones or ones that really do relate to our relationships. So strong new beginnings and endings to the depths of our relationship structures and deep and meaningful connections, possibly beyond words, almost certainly I would say beyond small talk. So you're getting to know someone as who they are. You're peeling away the layers of the onion here and making sure that, like, I see you, I listen to you, I hear you, I understand you. It's the I see you kind of situation that we're looking at. So we have that kind of being the hallmark of Scorpio season here the next month until Sagittarius season takes over. And then on the 25th, this new moon is a partial solar eclipse in Scorpio at 6:49 a.m. Eastern time. Adjust for your time zone. I'm sure there will be headlines galore telling you what's coming. And so this is new beginnings and endings with the structures and processes around women in relationships and masculine voices, possibly overpowering them. And I'm going to show you what I mean by this on the chart that discusses this. So bear with me for a second as we cover these last 2 transits before we jump into the charts, and I can really guide you through why I'm saying what I'm saying with these things. And honestly, normally I'd be like, well, I don't want to say something for sure because who knows what happens and we have so much autonomy, but we do know that this is a theme right now. It's a very important theme, and I don't want to shy away from the fact that it is a reality either. So what I'm saying is this has been a theme for this eclipse cycle, and it is a continuation in that plot. It is a plot point that we will notice some movement and change taking place around this. It's a pivot in the story. So on the 26th, Mercury will trine Mars. Both of them are still direct at this point. Mercury actually rules Mars because Mars is in Gemini. Mercury is still in Libra. So you might have some sharp words to others, because again, Libra is about the us and them. Mars is not really thinking about what he's saying. He's just saying it. Sometimes that's brilliant. You can come up with your best compliments on the fly. This is a trine. So it could be something where you're just like, you look amazing in that. I couldn't even hold myself back. I'm so impressed. So sharp words to others can also be really kind words to others, decisive words, being able to pick the words just right. You know, normally you might have to think about it. What word do I want for this? I've tripped over my own words sometimes in this one, but I'm really taking advantage of today's aspect here on September 28th 8th to be able to say that Saturn is helping structure my sharp words today. So I know I'm going to be coming up with decisive words as well. A similar energy to what we might be feeling here in the fact of being able to choose our words carefully and kindly from the heart. Count to 10 if you feel like you need to make sure that you're saying it well. And sometimes silence is the best, most caring way to show someone that you care. Like, I want to choose the right words for you, so I'm going to take my time because you deserve poetry in this case. So then on the 27th, Mercury will square Pluto. And as Mercury squares Pluto for the third and final time, we are moving forward for both of them. Oh, so that was the trine. So Mercury is squaring Pluto now. The square creates conflict, as we said, but oftentimes conflict is created so that we can acknowledge something and move forward with it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. And we can look back to see themes of this from when Mercury first conjoined with Pluto, which was December 29th of 2021. And at that point, how beautiful is this, right? Mercury, the messenger, conjunct Pluto, which is the god of the underworld. At that time, they found time capsules beneath a statue of Robert E. Lee in Richmond. So not to say any kind of opinion surrounding the Robert E. Lee statue situation, but to find buried time capsules with messages from the past in there. So another theme here is unearthed messages. As it is a square this time, it might be important to remember not to kill the messenger for Mercury's sake, right? So just knowing that you may receive news at this point that deserves some time and consideration, and then you can take aligned and educated and decisive action on it once you've felt through what this means to you. Pluto does ask us to really understand what we think, what we feel, what we mean in these situations. It's very important. Okay. So next, we're going to move on to the charts to help us round out the month. So Scorpio season, we're looking back to here, as you can see, October 23rd. And that is, I am ready for the next level. It's getting to know yourself and others on deeper levels, past the small talk, as we had said. So we're seeing the Sun and Venus coming into Scorpio at the same time. Don't mind the house system here. It's irrelevant. It's just what it's going to look like if you're in New York at that time. So we're looking at Venus being very much involved in the theme or the birth of this Scorpio month. So Venus in detriment, maybe not be feeling her most confident, but is receiving this trine. No, it is not. That trine is to the air signs. It's close enough that my program believes that there's this trine because of the 5 degrees of separation. And normally I might accept that, but because they've gone over into a new sign, I'm going to say the trine does not apply, but the dispositorship does, the rulership of Mars over Venus and the Sun. Him saying, yeah, I kind of, I see what's going on here, and I'm giving this an intellectual air to it. So getting to know yourself and others on deeper levels, past the small talk. Remember, we're penetrating the small talk at this point. We're saying, let's get past that stuff. We'll go through. Penetrating is another great word for Scorpio. I know some of you are probably laughing right now. Have fun with that. But yes, yes, that is a word in many of its contexts that goes along with Scorpio themes. Then on our next slide that shows the eclipse, we see here, it is the moon and Venus and the sun, all conjunct, partile conjunct, because they are all on the 2nd degree here. Venus is at 39 minutes. The moon and the sun are at exactly 2 degrees. And because they're close to this node, this is the south node, that's how we know, looking at a chart, that this is an eclipse. So if you're learning astrology, that's a fun fact for you. When the full moon or a new moon happens, usually within 15 degrees of this node here, that is an eclipse. If you're in the same sign as the node, it's a pretty safe bet. So we're looking at this saying, I am empowered in my divine energy. Check the Scorpio in your chart to see where this is kind of coming up for you, because the Scorpio Taurus axis here is where these eclipses have been taking place since about last Halloween. So you would have noticed things kind of beginning around last Halloween, with a peak or some kind of new plot development happening around that April 30th and early May time period. And now we're going to see another point in that come up again. So wherever you see Scorpio, this symbol, with whatever house number that's associated with, in this case, it's the second house, you look up the themes of that house and know how that applies in your life, because the themes of that house would be the theme of life or the areas of life where these eclipses are affecting you. The next eclipse will be a lunar eclipse in Taurus that takes place in early November, and we'll cover that in our November overview. So to round out October, we are looking at the 28th through the 31st, so through Halloween. And on the 28th, what we're seeing is Jupiter, still retrograde, does come into Pisces. So Jupiter is back in domicile. In this case, Jupiter rules Pisces traditionally. And so that the last time Jupiter was in Pisces, and this is what's going to come up again for you, since Jupiter is retrograde, we are revisiting themes of the last time Jupiter covered these degrees of Pisces, which was December 29th. Jupiter was in Pisces, not the end of Pisces, but was in Pisces. So things around then would have still probably applied to the area of your life that you're going to see changes and revisitations around for this case. So December 29th, 2021 through May 10th, 2022, things that came up for you around then in the area of life that is ruled by Pisces, again, looking for the numbered house associated with Pisces in your chart, and then seeing what themes go along with that. When this comes up, I will likely do a video on it to sort of explain it more in depth. So you'll be able to find that on my Instagram and on my TikTok, again, at The Real Crystalline. But thinking about what kind of stuff happened for you around that time to see what might come up again for you. So that's interesting. And that's why I'm calling this a blast to the past, because Jupiter is expansive. So thinking about things that happened previously. And then finally, the last aspect of October does happen on the 30th, and that is Mars begins retrograde, squaring Neptune retrograde as well. So Neptune's been retrograde for a while. It will trine the sun this month at the end of, it will trine the sun this season. So at the end of Scorpio season, which will take place in November, around the first half to middle of November, we will see that happen where Neptune will prepare to go direct again. And honestly, we will have all planets direct again for the first time since early 2021 by the end of January. So that's something to look forward to as well. But this Mars retrograde will cover the degrees between 25 degrees Gemini and 8 degrees Gemini. And so that started, so themes that came up, especially in the area of your life, ruled by Gemini in your chart since September 3rd, will be revisited. So if things have been really crazy and almost overwhelming in that area of your life since September 3rd, we now have meaning for this. You can look at that and say, okay, things are going to slow down a little bit. I'm going to have a minute to be able to say what I want to do, to be able to assess, to be able to strategize and come up with ideas for how I want this to go moving forward. Then on January 13th, the retrograde will end, and you will be able to apply those changes, solidify everything that you want to do moving forward. Then on March 15th, you will be through all of the degrees once again that Mars had covered. And we will move forward entirely onto new projects, with Mars finally leaving Gemini, finally, on March 25th, 2003, when Mars will enter into Cancer. And so Mars in Cancer is not as happy as Mars is normally, but we have time to think about that, to prepare for that. And I will cover that, of course, in the Mars astrological overview for 2023. So you can look forward to that. You can count on me to be here for you. And because I love these things, I hope you guys do too. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it was entertaining. If you want to stay connected with me, TikTok and Instagram at The Real Crystalline, here on the Alchemist Inkwell YouTube and podcast. And we will be soon opening up pitches again. If you want to see if you are aligned to join the Forgotten Storytellers program, we have some exciting new things coming up that we will be ready to announce very soon. And pitches will be opening again in November or December. So I want to give you that heads up. Hope to see you guys at Astromagia the weekend of October 8th. Or at KazimiCon the weekend of October 22nd. I hope you have a very blessed and wonderful October. And that, of course, you just roll with the transits, that everything goes as well for you as possible. And you know what? I'm going to end it the way we do on the Alchemist Inkwell, that you take October and this amazing transformative energy coming up with the eclipses, with the stationings, and with Scorpio season, and go make some magic. Have a great time, guys.